Even if you are not overtly familiar with the intricacies of GSC OU, you still probably have some general ideas of what the metagame is like. The first idea you probably have is that Snorlax is everywhere. That is absolutely true. I have a video dedicated to it. The second idea you probably have, and the probable reason why you don't have much interest in GSC, is because it seems like every game is like the one I'm showing on screen right now. Not just stall, but the extreme, endless, excruciating kind of stall where no progress is made and your browser starts lagging because it's been going on for over 2 hours, and the end result is a tie. I agree, if the metagame was like this, then I would not enjoy it either. But I'm here to dispel that harmful stereotype. This metagame is arguably the best OU, and it is not all stall. Yes, it has stall, and stall is very good, but GSC also has offense, a lot of good offense, and that is what we are going to be exploring today. So, let's get this off the screen. And yeah, I realize that a friend of Mr. Golem's team is not a stall team, and we are going to be examining the techniques offense uses. So yeah, thanks to the nature of GSC, then a lot of stuff is going to have rest and sleep talk, so even offensive teams have longevity. So on occasion, if you play long enough, then you are going to inevitably run into some guy who thinks he can struggle sweep you, and yeah, okay, that sucks. But I promise, that is a rarity among rarities. And the vast majority of the time you are playing this tier, you are going to have good dynamic games, as we are going to see. This game, all the games I'm showing today are from the past Smogon Premier League, and this game was the only instance of this. So, yeah, let's get it off the screen. So, the idea of offense in GSC, you know, ever since the dawn of time, people have said, oh, GSC is all stall. And the easiest way to dispel that notion is to remind people that the premier special wall, besides Snorlax, is not Blissey, but Raikou. So even defensive teams need to dish out damage, and that's why teams like the one Earthworm is using here are very inconsistent, because they rely on the opponent beating themselves, really. I know Earthworm said he was going for struggle sweeps or something, but you know, come on. That's just unhealthy, so I don't think that's going to take off anytime soon. So, yeah, offense. This is a thread back in 2012, back when Pokemon Online was the main simulator, and GSC was not as widely accessible as it is today with all the resources and whatnot. So people just said, well, stall generation, I'll use Blissey. And Blissey is good in GSC, but it's very specific and not nearly as splashable as, say, Raikou. So in this thread from 8 years ago, then, you know, a bunch of experienced GSC player listed solid offensive Pokemon. That's generally the idea of what we're going to be doing today. Everything in the video, as always, will be linked in the description. And the music is by Mewmore. I'm using a Gen 2 Mewmore remix playlist, so check that out. Alright, so let's look at the viability rankings and look at the Pokemon there. So, there are a lot of offensive Pokemon. Like Snorlax and Zapdos are great because they have immense defensive utility, but they're also massive offensive threats, very often with the same set. So yes, thanks to the inherent nature of GSC, where all your stats are maxed out. I'll fix the dimensions for the team builder later, because we still have replays to go over. So thanks to the inherent nature of GSC, where there's leftovers on everything, and you have maxed out bulk, and there aren't boosting items like no Choice Band, Life Orb, Choice Specs, nothing like that. And there's not nearly as much residual damage flying around because Spikes only has one layer. So yeah, it's not going to be as bang as later generations. However, I also want to say that Gen 2 is not the only game where you can get into an extraordinarily long stall war. You know, there are several other generations where that is absolutely feasible, but I would say the odds of running into like a truly endless one in generations like DPP or even advanced sometimes, or Oris, or Sun and Moon. Yeah, especially the gens with regenerator. So you're going to have long games in every generation, but that is not a reason to not get into GSC, because it is skill intensive and it is dynamic and it is enjoyable far more than it is stale. So we're just looking at why it has this bulkier nature first, this slower pace generally. So we see a lot of offensive Pokemon here. I mean, Cloyster, yeah, spikes, but also fast, strong stab, surf to ward off normal resists, and thus it can explode effectively. The only truly defensive Pokemon in the top 10 is Skarmory. Everything else is used offensively. And, you don't get to another stall-specific Pokemon until you get down to Suicune. So then, as you see, the dedicated hardcore stall Pokemon are lower. Offense is... You can run offense and you can run stall with generally the same Pokemon. So it really depends on the approach you want to take. So now let's look at what a general offense-on-offense game looks like. So it's not going to be as instant as generations with super offensive teams where it's over in 20 turns. No, but every turn is crucial for making incremental progress. So it's not like you can just say, oh, well, whatever, it's going to take forever anyway, so I'm just going to mess around and then I'll probably win eventually. Nothing like that. Every turn in GSC is crucial, and you have to hold that not over the course of a game, because yes, you have to think long term, but long term, it takes a while for the pieces to start falling apart. So this is just, we're not going over the intricacies of the game, but as you can see, these are offensive teams. Steelix is an offensive Pokemon. I know it's bulky, but it explodes all the time. So, and then there's Gengar thieving the Snorlax. So, yeah, Toxic also resets to regular poison when you switch out, but because of the way that GSC works, so when you switch in, you take poison damage, so you can take advantage of that with Roar. That's why Roar Raikou is such a dangerous threat with spikes down, because it matches up so well against so many Pokemon. And, you switch in and you're Toxic, and you take spikes and the Toxic, and then you're roared out again. So you have to combine the little sources of passive damage to make progress over the course of a longer game. And longer comparative to the more instant offensive styles we see in the more power-filled newer generations, at least. So yeah, Roar Raikou is a very offensive threat, and that's a common stall Pokemon. So even stall teams, the vast majority of the time, as we're going to see in the next game, have a lot of offense to them. They don't just rely on PP stall and spikes and Toxic and whatnot. Those are good tools, but they also have offense, mostly because they have Snorlax and a legendary Electric, so they're always going to be able to threaten in some way. And, with the other Pokemon they have, well, this is offense for now, but look, Fear was really set on not using Rest this past SPL, and he was just pushing the boundaries and showing, look how all-out offensive I can make my teams. So Restless Zapdos is not unheard of, but to use it is still tough just because of how good Rest Talk is. So here's Rest Talk Snorlax, even on offense, just because offense was so popular and so dominant in GSC for a time that Jinx rose up to shut it down. So now you have to kind of slow it down to beat Jinx with things like Rest Talk Snorlax and Rest Talk Raikou. So also help against Nidoking, who is a massive pain. So yeah, ooh, double crit. So yeah, you can see that this game is still, I mean, people see, oh, look, GSC offense, and it's 5-5, 6-6 after 30 or whatever turns. That is not a bad thing. A Pokemon game taking its time is not bad at all. Matter of fact, I see a lot of newer gen games in Oris and Sun and Moon. I play a good chunk of them myself, where even offense-on-offense games, they can go up to 90 turns, and those are solid games. So GSC is really not that different in that regard. Just has a negative reputation that I'm hoping this video will help you get past. So we're not going over every aspect of this battle because that's not really the point. The point is that Here you can see how dynamic offense on offense is. And yeah, sometimes you're going to have to stall a couple turns because things like Nidoking are dangerous, but thanks to the offensive tools at our disposal, both the great Pokemon and Explosion and even stuff like Thief and Status Spam, then you can absolutely chain together offense. So here's Jinx going wild. I mean, even Snorlax isn't safe because GSC Sleep is really, really long. It's up to 6 turns. So that's why Sleep Talk. That's another reason why Sleep Talk is so common. In addition to the resilience it gives you with your, in addition to the resilience you have in the face of status and opposing attacks, then it also helps absorb opposing sleep, which would otherwise be really hard to deal with. So that's another option you have for breaking through stall teams. Before we move on to the next game, then I wanted to look at some of the offensive options. I mean, look, Machamp, that is as all-out offensive as you get. Nidoking is offensive. And yeah, most Pokemon in early generations... so in newer gens, you have these Pokemon that are designated breakers, right? So like a big Choice Band or Choice Specs Pokemon. And it doesn't really have much defensive utility, but it's so strong that you do all you can to get it on the field, because as soon as you get it onto the field, then you are going to be ripping a huge chunk of HP, if not an entire Pokemon, away from your opponent, no matter what you click, just because of sheer power. So in GSC, you don't have much like that. So the offensive Pokemon are good offensively and defensively, because you have to rely on them defensively. There's no U-turn to get them in safely. And otherwise, for something like Machamp, then it's offensive, but it doesn't also resist much. Like, it's safe as Switch's T-Tar, which can still be annoying with spikes down. So it really requires good play. Like, to get the most out of Machamp, you want to be double switching it in, because you don't want it taking attacks and then being revenge killed easily by faster Pokemon after a curse. So you want it as healthy as possible. So that's the kind of play that is required. But things like Exeggutor and T-Tar and Nidoking, then they have defensive use. I mean, even something as frail as Gengar, first of all, it's not that frail because of the EV system, but second of all, its typing makes it, or gives it defensive utility, more so than you would think. And its speed and its move pool and everything. So it's a common. You're not going to be able to just stack a big hitter on there and rip through teams. That's true. Instead, it's got to be a concentrated team effort to break through the opponent's defenses. And I think that is a really great dynamic to have. So, yeah, and if you're wondering about the GSC player base, there are... I would not be able to finish using all fingers on one hand to count the amount of people who actually want 1,000 plus turn GSC games. Most people are like, look, guys, even 600 is pushing it, so just don't. So, yeah. So I really would not worry about games going endless, because most people are not going to be into that. So, yeah, now let's look into how even stall can be played offensively. So, so Kratos Mana's team here is undeniably stallish, but it's also focused on... this is the more effective kind of stall than the kind of endless PP stalling thing Earthworm was going for. This style of team focuses on chipping the opponent as quickly as possible and limiting their options for being able to break through you. And of course you have your offensive options, as we're going to see in a second, because Snorlax is such an offensive threat. And look, it just stays in here on Rhydon, unafraid, just double-edging stuff left and right. So you get your spikes up and you actually pressure with as much status and offensive and attacks as much as you can. So, and yeah, you're going to have to stall a couple turns, because you're not going to be able to just switch in your big Choice Band T-Tar on Zapdos and fire off a Stone Edge and KO something. But that's true for offense as well. So I just wanted to illustrate this game because, or use this game because it illustrates the idea of even stall being offensive just as much as it can be defensive. And yeah, you're going to want your good defensive core. That's natural. But you're going to want that on every GSC team. So it's really, the Pokemon on both offense and stall are generally similar. Like you can run Snorlax and Zapdos and Raikou and Cloyster, Fortress, and Gengar in both offense and stall. So it really depends on the approach that you feel like taking. Like if you want a bulkier approach, then you can go with stuff like Misdreavus and Umbreon and Suicune. And if you want more offensive, then you can go with stuff like Vaporeon and Machamp. But stuff like T-Tar fits on both styles. So it really depends. The line can definitely be blurry at times. Like in the last game we're gonna watch before we before we go into the team builder, shows just how close the two styles really are. Just because of the pool of Pokemon they're choosing from and how Rest and Sleep Talk are just natural facets of every Pokemon or most every Pokemon in GSC, or at least Rest, if not Sleep Talk. So, yeah. So this is so Kratos Mana or Anti is pressuring Mystery at every corner. He's got the defensive core for sure that is well equipped against him, but he's also done great at actually attacking him. See, he's not just... Look, if he was trying to stall everything to death, then Blissey would be his Zapdos answer, but no, he's going offensive. So that, and there's the Roar Raikou with the spikes down, and here we see how threatening Machamp can be. I know it dodged a Toxic earlier, but the general idea is that with good team support, then it will definitely be able to threaten a lot. So, interesting remix. Anyway, so yeah, Machamp is really dangerous because of crits, and anyway, yeah, so that was a dynamic game. So this is the last game we're going to see, and I love this game because it has Espeon on both sides, so that's another thing you can look for. Underrated offensive threats in GSC. I'm not saying that you're going to be able to slap them on every team, but something like Espeon or like Alakazam, just these underrated offensive threats can definitely go a long way in GSC. You are not handicapping yourself by not going all defense, and we're going to skip a little. But yeah, look, Espeon switches into Gengar nicely, and Zakuru actually forgot to make his Gengar itemless, which is why Thief failed, but it's still funny. Okay, so this is what I was talking about. So Conflict's team is undeniably offensive insofar as it has an Espeon, who is an offensive Pokemon, but Espeon still has defensive use. It's good against... Excuse me, hiccups. Gengar, it's good against Gengar, which is amazing, so it can't blow up Raikou or Snorlax, and it helps a lot against Machamp, so it's not threatening to burst through your Skarmory and Gengar combo and then just destroy everything else. So it's still a defensive Pokemon, but it is largely used offensively, but Conflict still has a Skarmory for defensive utility because, Espeon invites in Snorlax, so he wants to be defensively secure against it, which is definitely fair. So at this point, that whole offense stall terminology is kind of confused. Like, which one is it? You got the Thief Gengar, but you've also got a Skarmory. Those two don't go together, but they can. That's part of why GSC is so interesting. And Zakuru's team, on the other hand, because his last is Espeon, it says, I'm not going to defend against Snorlax and wait for my perfect opportunity to come in and sweep once it's been weakened. No, Zakuru's team is all-out offense. And he's just saying, look, I'm gonna bowl over that Snorlax. I'm going to offense it at every corner. So that is an example of just how, first of all, how all-out offense works, and second of all, of just how dangerous offense can be, even when you'd think, oh, well, GSC, gotta go stall, gotta go defense. And yeah, okay, there's gonna be rest on this Snorlax, and probably the Zapdos as well, unless he's really crazy. But but that's the thing. He doesn't. He goes all out, so it's absolutely feasible to pull off offense like this, extreme kinds of offense. If you've seen me ladder in GSC, then you will notice I use this exact team with Jinx over Espeon, which was originally a build by Cased, and I have tweaked it endlessly to my own liking. So, yeah, that's the general idea, that it really is more than feasible to run such extreme offense at GSC and succeed with it. And underrated threats and whatnot. So it really is not that different from the other OU generations, and hopefully this has helped you dispel it. So now we're wondering, how does GSC offense work? What are its structures? Well, we're gonna, this end game was thrilling because explosions and whatnot, because that's how you kill it. So you're wondering, okay, what are my tools? How am I going to break through offensive stuff while still handling, while still breaking through common defensive course? Well, I'll show you. So, your number one Pokemon is Snorlax. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So, those look like pretty good dimensions. So, the set is... So, I'm going to rattle off a list of stuff you want to check. You want to check opposing Electric, so Zapdos and Raikou. And you want to check opposing Snorlax. So, generally what a lot of teams do... not everyone, they will force Snorlax to rest and then phase it out with a normal resistant phaser. So Steelix, Tyranitar, Golem for offense, and Skarmory for defense. Feasibly Tyranitar or Golem there as well, but Skarmory is the traditional defensive one. So what you're going to do is force Snorlax to rest and then phase it out, and then you are fine. Especially since we're talking offense here, then what you want to do is exploit Snorlax while it's asleep, because Snorlax is not going to be able to fend off something like Vaporeon if it's asleep, and it's not going to be able to hit your Machamp with Double Edge on the switch if it's asleep. And if it's Sleep Talk, then you at least are not going to be bothered by its coverage, since your normal resist will wall it forever. So a team like Zokuru's here, or Caste's, focuses more on sheer pressure and explosions to keep such a Snorlax in check. Alright, we're going to skip over to this remix because the words get in the way of my own thinking. Sorry. So yeah, this is the playlist I am using. Okay, so back to this. Anyway, so yeah, you're going to want to check the electrics. You're going to want to check opposing Snorlax, and that'll come naturally. So Snorlax set you can really tweak for your own. Then you're going to want spikes before you choose your offensive tools. Just because, look, in theory you do not need spikes, but in reality, Cloyster and Fortress, especially Cloyster, are great Snorlax checks, and they pack Explosion. So you are going to fit them. And plus, it's just so much easier to break through teams if you have spikes. So for offense, since this is more of a beginner's guide, we're going to keep it simple. You're going to use Cloyster with this moveset because Toxic forces Snorlax, who is cursed already, to eventually rest, and from there you can take it down. So there's that, and of course Explosion is good because Cloyster's Stab Surf wards off rocks and steels, and does a pretty good chunk to Gengar as well. And Misdreavus is vulnerable to getting Toxic. So anyway, so yeah, you're going to use Cloyster, and then you're going to use Zapdos, because Zapdos is the number 2 Pokemon in GSC behind Snorlax, and it has... well, first of all, we're going to keep it simple again, and stick with the Sleep Talk set, just because it is so good against everything. It absorbs sleep from things like Nidoking, and it remains threatening while asleep. So I know we saw Fear use Protect and Whirlwind, but Fear is a very experienced GSC player, and if you are... This is a generally good rule for Pokemon as a whole. If you are new to the metagame, do not get cute with innovative options, because you have to understand the metagame before you can innovate in it. So yeah, you want to stick with this, and we're going to determine our Snorlax set based on the rest of our team. So if we're gonna, let's take the Zakuru, Espeon, or the Case Jinx, for example. So, no, wait, no, sorry, we'll get to that. Because now the next traditional spot is for the Electric check and the Steelix check. Or, sorry, Snorlax check. So these generally are Steelix or Golem, because they are immune to electric, they do not instantly die to hidden power, and they can threaten explosion. And in Steelix's case, it can threaten stall, because it curses and you cannot phase it with Skarmory, because the slower roar wins in GSC, so curse makes you slower. And then you eventually boost up to +6 and blow something up, and from there your teammates can pick up the pieces. So that's what Steelix does. If you run Golem, then you run Earthquake, Rapid Spin, Roar, Explosion, and your goal is more to clear the spikes, especially if Cloyster has poisoned the opposing Cloyster, which very often happens. Then you clear spikes, and thus you get more defensive utility out of Snorlax. So this is all you really need because you're checking so much here. So now you have flexibility for the last 2 slots. So some of the common offensive Pokemon here, those are the viability rankings. So this is where you can start messing with whatever you like. You can add a second legendary Electric. Generally you don't see it with Steelix, you'll see it with... so we'll get to everything. Sorry, I'm bursting with everything I want to say. Okay, so you can add... let's just go through the viability rankings. You can add Gengar. Gengar is great. It spin blocks against annoying Fortress. It has Explosion to open up Zapdos by baiting and destroying Raikou. So that's your defensive core breaker, because you're not going to be able to just attack stall teams until they collapse. Things aren't strong enough. It's a systematic team effort. So you're going to have to get up those spikes. You're going to have to spam Toxic. You're going to have to threaten and use Explosion. You're going to have to phase around with Roar. You're going to have to threaten Thunders with Zapdos and Double Switch. The Snorlax Zapdos Double Switch is among the best in GSC because, think about it like this. Zapdos is in versus Skarmory, right? And you just double switch to Snorlax. Or you just switch to Snorlax with that. Because Raikou is coming in and Snorlax threatens it, so you rack up spikes damage there on Raikou. It's only 6% total because there's no sand to make it stick or anything, and it's only 1 layer, but that's the idea of GSC, that it takes concerted effort or concentrated effort throughout the course of a game. So you're going to have to pull that switch off several times, or you can roar Raikou in with Steelix until it's so low throughout from spikes that it can't avoid eating an Earthquake anymore. That's your opportunity. So this will come through experience, by the way. I'm going to encourage you to... oh, actually, that's what I was forgetting, the sample teams. So yeah, the sample teams and Ruins of Alpha are great for every generation, but I encourage you, if you want to get into GSC, and you should, then you take these sample teams and the Ruins of Alpha subforum. They're also in my Discord server if you're there, but you look at these, and these are some of the teams, and you can play with them, and look at how offensive all these teams are. You know, you have a couple stall teams, but by and large, you have a ton of offense here. So... and even the stall teams have a lot of offense of their own. I mean, Toxic is an offensive move. So, anyway, back to this. So, now that we've covered those synergies, we can go over those teams, those Pokemon. You can fit in some more. You can fit in Gengar for spin blocking, exploding, ripping through defensive cores. You can use Exeggutor, who's similarly effective because it's got status, it's really strong, it's got good coverage, it's got explosion. So it really pairs well with a ton of stuff. Like if you stun spore a Zapdos with your Exeggutor, then later your Machamp is going to run right through it. You can run Tyranitar. Oh, quick note. Actually, we'll get to T-Tar synergy in a few. So then there's Nidoking. Nidoking alongside Steelix is great because it gives you a backup electric immunity. Then there's Machamp, of course, who rips teams open. And then there's Vaporeon, and then other options like Starmie and Jinx. And now we're getting more towards the stallier stuff or the niche stuff. Oh, Rhydon is another great. It's like Steelix and Golem that doesn't explode, but it is really, really strong. So it really smacks Snorlax without having to explode, because it can't. But its Earthquake is really powerful. So Rhydon is another great choice here. So, and then you have your offbeat threats like your Tentacruels, Espeons, Charizards, and what have you. So we're going to stick to the higher rank. So you can fill it in, like as you saw in the sample teams, and the most standard is a combination of Exeggutor and Machamp or Vaporeon. So here we've got Eggy, and then we've got Vaporeon, or we've got Machamp. Again, the sample teams are your friends. And here's where you can start mixing it up. You can run Gengar over Exeggutor here. You can run, or you can run Jinx over Machamp. Or you can run Jinx over Gengar. And Jinx plus Machamp is a great combination. And you can switch this Steelix to Golem. Or, don't use Black Belt, that was a misclick. Use lefties. You can use Golem, or you can use Rhydon, or Tyranitar. So now, a little note on Tyranitar. If you're fitting it, then it is going to be a good normal resistant phaser, but you are going to not have an electric resistance. So generally, Tyranitar pairs well with Nidoking, because that way you get your normal resistant, you maintain an electric immunity, or resist at least. And then the last can be Gengar, Machamp, what's the Pokemon I'm thinking of? A million things. Sorry, I'm kind of blanking. Jinx is another one. So Gengar and Machamp are the most common. And yeah, you can switch Cloyster out for Fortress. It's got to be a little more afraid of Snorlax because it's got the fire weakness, but it's still a great Pokemon overall and has Rapid Spin as well. So yeah, so if you're running T-Tar, you're going to want generally Nidoking or Raikou alongside it. And if you're running Raikou on offense, then you want the Rest Hawk set, simply because that's another thing you have to answer. If you do not have... generally on offense nowadays, you are going to want one of Rest Hawk Raikou or Rest Hawk Snorlax, or Vaporeon if you can fit it. But generally, Jinx is really annoying, so more and more offensive teams have been turning to Double Edge, Rest, Sleep Talk, Snorlax. So if you have Pursuit support for Gengar, then you can run Curse, but you can also run Earthquake, Flamethrower, Thunder, what have you. You know, some players have experimented with stuff like Surf and Ice Beam, so generally this is the most no-nonsense set because it really destroys Nidoking and handles Jinx. So, but Jinx is another thing to keep in mind because it is really dangerous for a lot of offensive teams. So generally HP Ice or Water. Ice is safer because it has a better bulk. Because HP Water, see, look at the DVs here. DVs is IVs, DVs are IVs in the first two generations. So see, that's HP Ice, and here's HP Water. So yeah, it makes you a lot less bulky. It's still a good move, but yeah. So yeah, you can definitely run double electrics to good effect. And then your last slot is flexible. You know, this can be... So yeah, I'm just trying to show you that there are a lot of options out there. So that's the traditional stuff where you've got your phaser, and for the non-phaser stuff, then you're just going to go all out offensive, so lots of explosions, lots of status, lots of offensive pressure from every corner. You know, you can slot in stuff like Machamp here, or Tyranitar without phasing move if you're really crazy, like if you have Screech or Dynamic Puncher. So yeah, the general idea is that you're just going to have to check the big threats. So the Electrics and Snorlax. If you can check those, most everything comes naturally. Just be careful around Jinx. Jinx is the offense killer for a reason. So that's why people are running so much Rest Hawk. Another cool thing is that if you are running a Rest Hawk Raikou, then you have... Rest Hawk Raikou frees up Snorlax's defensive use, right? Because Snorlax no longer has to stay alive, so it can continue switching into Thunders and Ice Beams and whatnot. So, especially alongside Zapdos for Nidoking, which Raikou cannot handle. then if you have these two rest talking, then I would encourage you to run an all-out offensive set with self-destruct. Because talk about wall breaking, nothing wall breaks as well as Snorlax. You can run a mix set with this, or you can throw Curse or Lovely Kiss in the mix, and then that opens up a lot of offensive options. Because Snorlax is generally the best at everything, so if you want it to wall, then it'll be the best wall. But if you want it to be the best wall breaker, because your team requires wall breaking, then yeah, you would want that as well. So then you can clean up with things like Machamp or Marowak. Marowak is good with a lot of Paralysis support. There are really a lot of different options you can take. Paralysis support is for a late game setup sweeper is a good one. So let's take, for example, wait, let me finish this one off. So Machamp, and then the last can be T-Tar for pursuit support. So like this is a great team. I used to run this a lot a couple of years ago. So please don't tell me you're out of remixes. Oh, good, not even close. Okay, so yeah, basically I'm showing you that you have your options. So what was the thing? Yeah, okay. So Paralysis support is another way. Beyond the offensive synergy I've shown you so far, then you would run things like Body Slam, Lax, whether it's Belly Drum, or Belly Drum as a rarity on offense, but Belly Drum, Curse, Rest, and then Filler. And then you can run stuff like, I liked Lovely Kiss on this a lot. Actually, I ran Lovely Kiss, Body Slam, Drum, and then Exeggutor, and with Stun Spore for things like Machamp, and then you've got your T-Tar for pursuit support, and then this last can be Machamp or Marowak. I like Marowak. That was one of my favorite teams. It's in the sample teams, actually, because of its electric immunity, but Machamp is also similarly fearsome late game, so you can spread all the paralysis you want, and you can look into alternative Zapdos sets if you like, because those with T-Wave are really nasty, but generally this kind of para gets the job done. So yeah, there's all kinds of synergy. You can, this is your starting point. I'm trying to make it easy for beginners. If you're really interested in learning the intricacies of GSC, I recommend watching SPL games, browsing the ruins of Alpha Subforum. You will learn so much by reading the GSC threads and posts from the experienced players there. So I really recommend that. You will learn all the cool combos like Curse Self-Destruct. Here's a great one. Curse, Body Slam, Earthquake, Self-Destruct Snorlax. So this is paired with Rest Talk Raikou. Whoops. Because this means you can blow up your Snorlax and still have all the defensive utility you could want against special attacks and whatnot. So you've got that going, and what EQ Snorlax does is bait in Skarmory better than anything else, and then you blow it up, and then you are good to sweep with your Curse Heracross, who is very hard to stop without Skarmory. And so that's a general idea of some good synergy. And then, you can fill in your stuff like your normal resist here. Golem is very popular. And then the last can be something like a Gengar. I think this is Sulcata's original team was Exeggutor, and then you can throw in Gengar if you like. But you can also throw in a Zapdos here. I think that's really nice, just because of how nasty Zapdos is, always and forever. So, yeah, this is just another example of how good offense can be. And yeah, you've got your rests and your sleep talks, but this is still an offense team. It's just a different way of doing things. So I think that just about covers most of what I wanted to say. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask, but I think the goal of this video was to show that, yes, stall is good, but offense is more than possible in GSC in many, many permutations. And it's not just possible, but it's effective. Because, yeah, you can run offense in some tiers, but it's just almost inherently worse, so why would you? But it's not the case in GSC. Offense is extremely good. Matter of fact, sometimes in the past, I've thought offense is too nasty because of how dangerous Explosion is. I don't really think that anymore, but the general sentiment remains that offense is really good. I mean, I'm not even getting into the niche stuff here because I want to make this beginner friendly, but there are a ton of options here. I mean, Moltres, I've been using some Moltres lately. It's a fantastic Pokemon. It melts things. And Houndoom opens up a lot of synergy for things like Machamp by pursuing Exeggutor and Gengar, and it's great against Jinx. Houndoom is very good against Jinx. So what it does is it allows you to run a non-sleep talk Snorlax while still running a you don't have to run Raikou, and you don't have to run a Sleep Talk Snorlax. You have to run Rest because it's still an electric answer, but you don't have to run Sleep Talk because Houndoom will own Jinx for you. So, and then you can throw in Machamp here or Heracross in the last slot or whatever you like. But I like Machamp; it's very good. So yeah, so this is just another example of just how many possibilities there are for offense. And if you loosen your definition for offense a bit and take it a little slower, then something like Quagsire is really, really nasty. McMegan and Kratos Mana have both had a lot of success with Belly Drum Quagsire, and yeah, you have to run bulkier teams to get it to work, as well as things like Swords Dance Marowak is more common on bulky teams as well because it likes having a defensive core to make up for its lack of defensive utility, and same for like Drum Snorlax. But at the same time, even stall teams need to have offense. So I think I'm gonna call it around there. I mean, once you get to down here, it's not beginner friendly. Stick to the stuff we've gone over in this video and the sample teams, absolutely the sample teams, and read this thread from the GSC discussion, like guys like McMegan analyzing games, and you will learn about the tier, and it is rewarding. I used to be intimidated by GSC as well, but one of my, what's the opposite of a regret? Because I have that for getting into GSC. I'm really glad I did. So yeah, I hope this video has shed some light on what GSC offense is and showed you some resources that you can have, that you can use rather, to get into your GSC for yourself. And yeah, you can keep going. God, this thread is fantastic, and you can learn about the metagame and what is used and whatnot. So in short, as long as you have these 3 Pokemon on your offense team, then you are starting off well. And I mean, you always need Snorlax, and yeah, the Spiker can change to Fortress, but you should be using Zapdos because it's good. So for now, use these 3 and go with what else has been shown in this video. The general guidelines, they will, I promise you, they are tried and true, and you will have fun playing GSC because it is wonderful. So I think that's really about it. I think I've said all I need to say, and I'm going to try to not repeat myself. So thank you guys for watching. I really hope this has shed some light. Oh, I also have this in my Discord server, but in this, if you're looking for the games I was looking for, then, or I was using, then here, the SPL replays, you can watch every GSC game from this past season. So, yeah, do that. So there are resources, and yeah, I think that really is it. So you know what to do. The resources are all there for you in this video and in the description. So enjoy perusing, enjoy getting into GSC, and I hope you like the metagame because it really is arguably the best. So thank you for watching. I hope you learned something, and I will catch you next time.